In the spring of 1995, Julie Marie Welsh was a bright 23-year-old with a promising future. After graduating from Marquette University as a foreign language major, Julie had returned to her hometown of Oklahoma City to work for the Social Security Administration. She translated for clients who struggled with English. She attended Mass each morning before work and had recently discovered anew the power of faith in her life. Julie had even met Eric, her soon-to-be fiancé, at a young singles prayer meeting. On Wednesday morning, April 23, 1995, Julie went to Mass and then headed to her office on the first floor of the Alfred Murrah Federal Building. Early in the day, she walked out to the waiting area to receive a client. While she was in the corridor on her way back to her office, Timothy McVeigh detonated a bomb. That bomb killed her and 167 other people. McVeigh would later claim that his violent act was revenge on the federal government for what he saw as oppressive actions against the Branch Davidian cult in Waco, Texas. At the time of the explosion, Julie's father, Bud Welsh, turned on the television to see a 3-story pile of rubble where the Murrah building had been. Instantly, he lost hope for his daughter's survival. Ironically, no one in Julie's work area was hurt. If she had returned from the corridor seconds earlier, she would have survived. For days after the blast, full of pain and anger, he drove to the site to remember, to reflect, and to wonder where to go from here. The first months of grief were the worst experience of his life. He obsessed about vengeance on McVeigh. His mind envisioned a quick and violent execution. Nothing more, nothing less could satisfy Bud's anger and pain. Or so he thought. Bud began to self-medicate with alcohol each night from the moment he returned home from work until he passed out for the night. The pain of Julie's death consumed him. His hangovers grew worse, and his cigarette habit shot from 1 to 4 packs per day. Slowly but surely, Bud Welsh was destroying himself. The loss was simply too great. Finally, in January 1996, Bud drove to the Murrah bomb site again. As he stood across the street and looked at the rubble, his head still aching from the night before, he thought to himself,
I have to do something different, because what I am doing now is killing me. It's not working. There's gotta be a better way.
Vengeance had motivated McVeigh's bombing and massacre, and Bud could see where that had led. To a tragic bomb site, a daughter gone forever, and the soul of a broken father swimming in anguish. Bud slowly began to soften. He changed from wanting McVeigh to be executed to simply wanting him to be tried and convicted. Justice, not vengeance. Wanting the death penalty felt too much like revenge to Bud. He began his first steps toward healing by speaking openly against the death penalty to students at colleges and universities. Sharing his story also helped him to deal with the grief of Julie's death. By talking openly, he was able to let out the pain he had been carrying around inside and trying to numb with his addictions. One day, Bud received an invitation to meet with Bill McVeigh, Tim's father. A Catholic nun arranged the visit for a time when Bud was already scheduled to speak in the Buffalo, New York area. Upon pulling up in front of the McVeigh home, with great anxiety, Bud got out of the car and walked up to the house where Tim the terrorist had spent much of his life. The ghosts haunting Bud were almost too much. He stopped, calmed himself, and moved forward. Slowly he entered the yard to meet the man who had reared a son who had grown up to commit the worst act of terror on American soil. At the door, Bud was greeted by Bill, whom Bud had seen only on television shortly after the tragic bombing. Bud and Bill walked and talked around the McVeighs' neighborhood for 30 minutes. They then went into the house where Tim's sister, Jennifer, joined them at the table. Their conversation unfolded slowly and nervously, but Bud knew he'd made the right decision to meet in person. He could not help but notice a large 8x10 photo of Tim McVeigh hanging on the wall in the kitchen. Sensing that Bill and Jennifer were probably self-conscious about how often he was looking at the photo, Bud suddenly blurted out,
My, what a good looking kid.
Bud, can you cry?
Yes. Why?
Bill shared that he had not cried for years. At that moment, a large tear fell from his eye and rolled down his cheek. They were two fathers together mourning a horrific tragedy in which each had lost a child. As Bud stood to leave, Bud, Bill, and Jennifer embraced. Overcome with emotion, Bud hugged Jennifer once more and shook hands with Bill. As he was about to leave, Bud embraced Jennifer and Bill once more, and they began to sob together. Bud sobbed more than he ever had before or since as an adult. At that moment, he could see the love of a father in the eyes of Bill McVeigh. Bud's forgiveness had opened the door to reconciliation and healing, a new path forward for both Bud and the McVeighs. When Tim McVeigh was executed in 2001, Bud, who already knew the pain of a father's having to bury a child, now shared that same pain of a father's loss with Bill McVeigh. Everybody needs to forgive somebody. Bud needed not only to forgive Tim McVeigh, he needed to establish a real relationship with McVeigh's father. Bud would even say that he needed to forgive God for allowing this awful tragedy to happen. In this case, Bud had no choice. Clinging to his pain and desire for vengeance was killing him from the inside out. His journey to forgiveness took 5 long years after Julie's tragic death. To this day, he still cannot explain how that process works, only that it takes time, patience, and prayer to slowly but surely heal a hurting soul. Bud still sees pain etched on the faces of those Oklahoma City victims' families who have been unable to forgive. They are trapped in their anguish, and the wound still festers deep within. Bud Welsh knows from his own experience there is only one key that can open the door to healing and a new life. Forgiving does not mean condoning what Timothy McVeigh did. Forgiveness also does not require Bud to forget Julie, her beauty, and the potential that was snuffed out that day in the bombing. Instead, forgiveness allows Bud to release the pain and poison and move forward to honor Julie with a healthy and meaningful life. He now helps others learn how to forgive. He aids people in discovering new life. It is often not an easy thing, this forgiveness, but it is a life-saving thing. Without it, anger leads to resentment, which leads to bitterness, which leads, finally, to spiritual death. A flash of anger and regret returns on occasion, when Bud sees a young woman who reminds him of Julie, or when he dreams that he has seen Julie alive again. But he moves forward, knowing that to live in the past is to die. He has made the choice to move past the pain and into the future. Bud Welsh has chosen the better way.